Hi, I'm Steve from Aging Joyfully.
And I'm Sue.
And we're going to talk today about these flyers that I continually get in the mail from the company I work for. And what the flyers are for sessions with a therapist. Never ever thought about sessions with a therapist. Why would I go to a therapist? Why would we want to go to a therapist? We're not having marriage problems. Why would we need a therapist? So in reading these, the therapists, they're talking about free sessions. You have a number of free sessions that you can talk with a therapist, and you can do it over Zoom, so you don't have to be in person. And they can help you with any of life's issues, any kind of mental health issues that you might be having. So Sue and I talked about it, and we thought, wow, maybe we can try this.
The thing is, these cards came every single month for probably a good, year or two? So it planted a seed in your head, month after month after month, that, hey, you might need therapy. Even though we've had our life together, our whole marriage, we've never had problems, right?
Pretty much. I mean early days, of course, you have your challenges.
Well, actually, I was going to say, when we got married, the lady who was Steve's friend, he had a female friend who was going to be the singer at our wedding, right? And and I'm going to quote her. I don't know, I guess I met her because she was going to sing at the wedding, and she said, "You two have your shit together." And I was like, well, that's one way of putting it, huh?
That's
right.
I
mean, because we had bought a house, we had good jobs, and we had goals. We wanted to have a family. We got married to start our family. We were not pregnant, but we wanted to have a family. We both were family oriented.
Yes.
And so, by the way, she did stand us up at our wedding. She never did sing. She didn't have her
shit together.
So anyway, with this age of therapy, and I mean, everybody's going to therapy. My good friend of 40 years, she's going to therapy now that she's gone through a gray divorce. And we overheard people when we went to Barnes & Noble talking about their therapy. And our new groomer talked about her therapist. Everybody's going to therapy. It's all over. When you watch YouTube, there's people talking about therapy. And I thought, well, it can't hurt. I mean, can't hurt.
Right. How could it hurt? I mean, yeah, you are talking to a stranger about your problems, but hey, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's good to get it out and talk about it. Maybe there's something that a therapist can help you discover in yourself that you never knew was there.
Well, I mean, I just thought that, I guess since the pandemic, everybody's, pushing the therapy, saying, oh, we've all been isolated and struggling, so you need to talk about this. And we were starting to lose family and friends. They were passing away, which was shocking.
Fortunately.
And at the same time, we became empty nesters, which was quite an adjustment. And I've read books throughout my life about what it's like to become an empty nester, especially for the mom. Mom always struggles because mom in general, just a generalization, stereotypical that the mom, is closer to the children. She gave birth to them, and that she struggles more.
That's true.
And so, I didn't know what direction I wanted to go. I mean, I had sacrificed so much for Steve and the children, giving up my career, and I didn't know where I wanted to go because COVID ended. I mean,
COVID was crazy. I mean, it was isolation. Everybody was isolated, and if you were isolated, some people chose to drink away the months of being isolated and the problems with COVID. And if you watch the news at all, that would make you drink. I mean, that would make you get therapy when you see what's happening around the world.
But we had moved.
And we had moved during the pandemic.
So that was a big adjustment because we weren't meeting people because they were staying at home. So we moved to be close to our grandson who was just born. And I took care of him for 2 years. And then because they wanted him to be socialized, he went to daycare. So here I was not knowing what to do. I was going to go back to teaching, and I just couldn't bear the thought of it. I just could not bear the thought.
That all changed.
It was
the classroom changed.
It was so tough when I was, and after the pandemic, and kids were declining. They've been declining for years, and won't get into that. You can watch a number of videos of teachers, but I just couldn't bear the thought of going back. So I thought, what am I going to do with myself and the loss? So I started out I contacted the company that was free through Steve's work, and they assigned me a life coach. And I was like,
simple.
I was like, wow, usually I'm the life coach. Usually I'm the one who's sound, stable, giving the advice, has my life together. And when I was in school, I was the one counseling the 18-year-olds and what to do, what career to have. I was always the one, that people came to. So I was like, so now I'm going to a life coach? And she's all of 30 years old. 30 years old.
A lot of life experience
I'm double her age, and she's going to tell me what I need to do.
And I think that's the biggest issue. I mean, you go to these therapists for insight and help with what your issues are. And yeah, I mean, they can talk through it with you. And maybe for a lot of people, just getting it out and hearing themselves talk about it is the answer. But you want to also have some insight into what you're thinking, feeling, experiencing, and getting that from a 30-year-old, or even if they're a 40-year-old. And it is possible. There's a lot in books that books can teach you, but it doesn't make up for actual life experiences, at least in my mind.
Well, they could be wise beyond their years. I mean, I always said I was born at 40. That's why I was always the one guiding people, because I was always a very old soul from birth. Right. So you could have a 30-year-old who's
right. I mean, they could have some good insight, but I think that's few and far between.
But we want to do a disclaimer here.
And so we are not therapists.
Obviously.
Okay? We are not in the medical field. Okay, so we want to understand that we are not against therapy. Okay? I mean, you do you, and what helps you is great, because really there's a lot of individuals who look for help in therapy, and if it can help, great. It will make you a better person, and that's what you're looking for. For us,
right. It didn't help us, but we didn't know that. I started with the life coach, and she gave me an assessment on anxiety and depression. And yes, I do have anxiety, not depression so much, but I scored fairly high, but it wasn't perfect. So she started working with, and she really didn't know what to do with me. She was reading a script.
Who does?
I mean, I didn't know they read scripts. So it's like a 911 operator. She flipped to the anxiety script, and I didn't realize she was reading it because I'm nervous. And so she would send me videos and scenarios of an anxious person and how to deal with it. And the biggest anxiety I have, because I am a nurturing mother, I get anxious when people don't do the right thing, like not getting medical testing, not doing things that are best for your health. So my biggest anxiety, of course, I have a lot of health anxieties because I never had grandparents. So because they were gone when I was born, that created a lot of health anxieties. So I get anxious when my siblings don't do medical testing as we are all aging. That creates anxiety. So she told me about a rope. I have a rope, and my siblings are on one and I'm on the other, and we're pulling that rope, and neither of us are winning, so it's creating tension. So I need to let go of the rope. Let go. Just drop that rope and let them not get tested, and if they get cancer or heart attack, die, or whatever, I can't control them. So because we've lost relatives to things that they shouldn't have died from before their time,
right.
That's really hard for me when I think, wow, that was a preventable death. They could have been alive to die at 61 and 63.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. That's pretty young still. I mean, 61, 63, that's awfully young. And when you can prevent death, but
they didn't want to. They did not want to.
Exactly. And I mean, you can't convince people. So that's where I say people do people.
Right. So that's my anxiety. So I was learning to let go, to let them do whatever. So anyway, I was short-lived because she said I graduated. I did so well. My anxiety and depression were like
Had a
whatever,
cap
whatever
and
the number was,
big
10.
band
It's like you don't have any. You've done so well. You've graduated. So she said I graduated, coinciding with her going on maternity leave.
And that worked out perfectly.
So she said, if you want to continue with us, you have to get bumped up to therapy, which is somebody with a master's degree. So I said, okay, I'm game. I'm game.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, but now we started with therapy, and this woman, or I guess we both start with therapy, and this woman starts with your parents. It starts telling you, like, you didn't have the childhood you remember, the childhood that you thought made you who you are. Well, it was awful. It was an awful childhood. She starts digging through your childhood, saying that, whatever. So then you start feeling bad about yourself, and you're like, wait. So then I start calling on my siblings, saying, hey, do you remember this? Do you remember this? And they're like, no. Like, I'm like, did we have enough food? Were we abused? Did we, and they're like, what's wrong with you? We had a great childhood. I mean, yeah, of course there's issues, because that's called life. That's called life. There's 8 siblings.
Life.
And of course there wasn't money for everything you wanted. There should be. You're a child.
Right.
So here I am, and they're like, why are you bashing on mom and dad? You weren't doing this before, but now that I'm in therapy,
Right.
where you start your childhood, right?
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, we're going to get a new therapist. This isn't working out. So we got a male therapist this time.
Yep.
And what happened?
We sure did. And, he seemed to be pretty insightful. I mean, he was very friendly, very accepting, and he listened to what we had to say. And he was kind of the opinion that, oh, yeah, there's something there. And, after a while, it's that he started picking us apart. And, it really wasn't making sense, and you're kind of thinking, wait a minute, I'm coming to you kind of, I guess, for help. And, you're making me feel pretty bad.
Well,
So,
we were there to deal with loss of family, friends, changing, emptiness, changing. I mean, it's common. I didn't know that's common for people who are older to struggle because of loneliness.
Right.
I did not know that because I never had grandparents. But when we lived in Buffalo, our neighbor was a psychologist, and she dealt only with elderly, and she said they were all depressed. And I was like, whoa, really? They're depressed?
Yeah.
I was surprised. I thought you'd be happiest when you're older, the happiest time in your life. And she had them all on medication. They were all on antidepressants. And basically her whole job was giving them prescriptions. And I was like, that's the first I heard that as you get older, you deal with, society doesn't respect you, you're neglected, ignored, whatever. Our society doesn't have use for elderly people. So we went to therapy to learn to deal with this, although we're still pretty young.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's all very difficult as you age, because you really feel like you're out there alone, and you're aging, and there's things that are changing in your bodies. It's kind of like adolescence, but in adolescence you have your parent or parents for the most, and have siblings. But when you're older, you don't really have anyone. I mean, I have Sue, and your body is changing.
What do you mean you don't have anyone? What do you mean you don't have anyone?
Well, you don't have anyone that you can talk about. Nobody wants to talk about health issues in older people.
Well, there are a lot of health conversations at Thanksgiving. We had quite a few health conversations.
Yeah, but you see that you need more than just that one time, and so as you age and your body starts to break down, which it does, which leads to death, and you don't really have anybody. So going to therapy was kind of help you deal with that, along with being empty nesters and what you're going to do for your remaining years.
So we're losing all these people, and we potentially the rest of our life we're going to be losing more and more, because all of our siblings and friends are pretty much older than us. They're not our age. They're in their late 60s, 70s, 80s. And so I asked him for help with dealing with the loss of what we just went through, plus the potential loss in the future. And he said, that's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's not really an answer from a therapist when this is why you're going to therapy.
And I remember thinking to myself, that's okay. He was about 40, 45. He was a little older. But I remember thinking, that's your response to me? Okay. I'm thinking, I'm a mom. If somebody came to me and said that, I'd say, you need to focus on your diet, your exercise, your sleep. These are all very critical.
Right.
Your social connections, you need to look for more hobbies.
Right. So in other words, give some answers.
Yeah, he had nothing.
Insight,
He had nothing. He said nothing. But then he started to attack us as parents and talked about, moving so many times.
Right. Yeah, and how that was, critical in our kids' development, with us moving so many times, and but that you see also on the other hand exposed our kids to different cultures, different areas of the country.
He said that we were abusive parents because we moved our kids. That's when I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I was getting so stressed out, and I said, what? What?
Yeah.
I gave up my career to raise our kids. I tutored them. I put them in activities. I drove them to activities. We paid for activities. We listened.
Yeah, and it's not just that. Then what he's saying is that if you look at military families that moved all the time, even in the country, out of the country, then you're saying all those kids from military families were abused, and I don't see how that really makes sense.
Well, the DSM-5 defines mental illnesses, and I don't really know because I don't have a copy here, but I think they define abuse, and moving your children is not considered abuse.
Yeah,
I mean,
really.
We were both blown away when he said that, right?
Right. Right, and it's also understood that you may have to go through a few therapists, maybe 3 or 4, to find the right therapist, because everybody has a different perspective. Every therapist has a different perspective, experience level, understanding, and so you may have to go through 3 or 4 of them. But that's trying in itself.
I've worked with hundreds or thousands of kids because I was never a permanent teacher. I was always moving from class to class. And a good number of them have moved. They would talk about all the places they've lived. And I thought, well, Georgia's nobody's from Georgia.
Transient state.
Everybody has moved. And I was like, so what you're saying is about 100% of people in Georgia the kids are abused.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't grasp my head. This isn't logical. This isn't logical that every kid who's been moved has been abused. It doesn't make sense. So they need to be in therapy. And this, instead of realizing this was ridiculous, I let it get to me. I let it get to me personally.
Yeah.
And it deteriorated my health, where I ended up in the ER from therapy. Because of the stress of therapy, I ended up in the ER. And I stumbled across this book while thinking about this. This is called Bad Therapy, Why the Kids Aren't Growing Up. Now, I don't like the rest of the title. I like the first two, Bad Therapy, because a lot of this book, I did read this a few months ago. A lot of it applies to children, so it doesn't apply to us. But the one thing I like this author, Abigail Schreier. She says that you can actually be hurt by therapy. And she compares it to like when you get testing that is unnecessary medically, like radiation, like when I've had a lot of CT scans that were unnecessary, that exposed me to the potential of cancer. She's saying that going to bad therapy like this, being told by being a good parents moving our kids so that they could eat and have a home, so that Steve had a job, that is doing damage, and that so this therapy damaged me. Now, I did see a YouTube video of a therapist reviewing the book, and she did not agree with the book. She agreed maybe little bits. I don't agree 100%, and I don't remember the majority, but the fact is it struck me as really interesting that that therapy can hurt you, because it definitely hurt me. It hurt me.
Right. Yeah, I mean, therapy is not for everyone. And for the people that it is for and it helps, it's great. Glad to have it because it helps people. And beings that it helps people, it's a valuable service. And my company provides it for no charge. And I think that if you try therapy, you may have to try a few therapists before you find one that's on the same page as you are. But if you need it, definitely give it a try, and hopefully it'll work. Feeling bad, feeling sad, feeling depressed is not a way to go through your everyday. And if talking to someone like a therapist is going to help you, then by all means, take advantage of that, and hopefully it will help. And then, you can live your life, smell the flowers, and understand that every day is a gift. And it's just, it's a beautiful gift. And this isn't a dry run. This is real life. And every day should count. You shouldn't spend your days sad and depressed and upset. They should be happy. You should be able to find a happy spot in the day to where you feel good.
Well, I kind of feel like there's so much guilt in you today. If you don't get therapy, everybody is going to therapy. And like we said, Steve's work paid for it. So it's almost like a status thing to go to therapy. But since I quit going, I made a decision in the ER that I was never going back to therapy. I said, that is it. I have been healthier, happier, and overall just better. I mean, it was literally killing me going to therapy. Being told what I call lies when we are great parents, when we did so much for our children, and being told because Steve worked for companies that reorganized the company, laid him off, and then he had to get a job. So he was the responsible parent who got a job, which happened to be in a different city. And then we moved the kids, and we involved them in activities to meet friends, and had sleepovers, activities for them. I volunteered at the school so I could see, just to have a blanket statement. First of all, I went to 3 different high schools. My high school years, 3 different schools, and I never ever thought I was abused. And actually, I attribute that to helping me talk to people. I was so shy that I believe all those moves helped me, because I realized people are different, come from different backgrounds, and it helped me open up and exposed me to different things, made me more open to accepting people of all backgrounds. And I thought the move was a positive thing. And academically it hurt me, because when we moved, the school was behind our other school. But I never, ever thought about blaming my parents for the move, and say,
right. Well, times are certainly different. Nowadays, everything's different. And that also, you go to therapy for that too, because times have changed dramatically. I believe that even before the pandemic, times were changing, but now, you can't pin it on one thing. Some people will blame the pandemic for changing the way we live. Some people will blame cell phones. Some people will blame video games. But something, we change and we progress, and change is going to happen, and you have to accept change. This world isn't going to be like it was in the 50s, 60s, or 70s. This is a new world that's developed, and it continues to develop, and times change. And so you have to learn how to deal with it. And a therapist may help you with that. That's kind of what we were looking for, because of times changing, and, people that we know getting sick, and, those kind of life issues that just come at you real fast. And you may need some help in dealing with them.
Well, we were being proactive as we're in the initial stages of losing friends and family. But one thing that Abigail said, and I don't know if she said it in the book or I've seen her on YouTube, and she said, how did the American children go to school on December 8th? After Pearl Harbor, how did they go to school? You know, they dealt with, every generation has had major events, from World War II to the Korean War to the Vietnam War to civil rights to inflation, rampant inflation.
The riots in the 80s and into the 90s, and then the 9/11.
9/11 and
Uvalde,
lockdowns.
Uvalde school
shootings.
and
every generation has had major
Sandy Hook
things.
and-
I mean, I guess our generation, I mean, what do we have with civil rights and Kennedy being assassinated, and then the 70s were pretty, a lot of things changed in the 70s.
And then, President Nixon resigning, and, I mean, there's a lot of changes. They were a little different. They weren't really, I don't know how you can put it, but they weren't cutting as deep as the ones today, or let's say from 9/11 to all the school shootings, the pandemic. Those really cut deep because a lot of lives were lost for no reason, and they didn't really have to be lost.
So, I mean, the point is that every generation has gone through a lot of trauma.
Right, and even before our generation, you think about the wars, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, World War II.
So every generation's gone through trauma, and we don't talk about moving as trauma. It's difficult, it's challenging, it's traumatic, but not really trauma. And we're not doctors, but the trauma of having your family members, not come home. I remember when we lived in Pennsylvania, one of the boys' mothers, it was a single mother. She was sent away she was in Desert Storm, so he was living with an aunt or something. So, yeah, that's pretty traumatic there. But the thing is, you have to learn to deal with it. Yeah, if therapy helps you, great. It didn't help us. I didn't know it would hurt as much as it did. And some people said, well, therapy is supposed to hurt. It's like, really? It's supposed to drag me down and feel so depressed where I could barely function. I was getting physically sick. Was therapy supposed to make you physically sick? This book applies more to children, young adults, but I like a couple of the premise of her book that therapy can hurt, because you never hear that. You never hear that therapy can hurt certain people, and
you hear the therapy is the answer.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Every commercial, go to my therapist says this. I think, what about a wise mom? If you just talk to mom, if you just asked your mom, would you need a therapist? I mean, that's what we did, right? We would just ask mom and dad. Yeah. We didn't go to the therapist.
People who have the experience. I mean, that's what you want to hear.
Or now I talk to my sister and say, what do you think? And she gives me advice. So, I mean, the therapist didn't know us. I didn't know our stories. I always felt like we were fighting that clock, like we were watching the clock the whole time.
That's the hard part, is that you jump into a therapist on Zoom, and you start talking about your issues, and that therapist doesn't know anything about you.
Nothing.
The therapist doesn't know what you did the day before or even the year before.
He didn't even know what we did for a living. He never asked our level of education.
Exactly.
What we did for a living, what kind of stresses we had in our life, where we lived, if we had dogs, he didn't know anything about us.
So how can you, stake claim on what people should do? How can you guide people in therapy if you don't know anything about them? Yeah, you may say to them, "Oh, tell me about your childhood." Okay, so you zip through, the number of years in your childhood. And so they're going to pull out, traumatic times in your childhood. Everybody's had traumatic times, whether your parents got divorced, whether you fell off a bike, whether you got suspended from school, no matter what.
If you're bullied
or whatever. But you see, that's only one situation in your life.
It's called life. If you didn't make the part to this play or whatever, that's life. That's dealing with disappointments in life.
Yes, exactly. And, I talked to a person the other day who said, people don't know how to deal with life. He said, back in our day when we were younger, you got into a fight with somebody and they may have hit you in the stomach or in the face or shoulder or whatever, and then the next week the two of you were friends. Okay, and so that kind of taught you how to deal with it and work through issues, which we don't have today, because nobody's really outside.
When I was working in schools, they'd say all the kids would go, they're not allowed to be in line next to that one or that one. So I'd have to, half the class was not allowed to sit next to this kid or that kid, and I'd be like, seriously? In our day, you just you had to deal with it. You dealt with it. You were not allowed to be 3 people away from them, and that added so much stress to working. And then I don't know. They had
Right. So, therapy, like I said, if you're going to try it. You may have to go through 3 or 4 therapists, but hey, if it's going to help you, that's great.
Right. Please don't comment that we're trashing therapy.
Right.
If therapy works for you, great. It may be our age because we didn't grow up with therapy.
Right.
It seems to have exploded since the pandemic, that it's everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
And also maybe we got some less than professional people because it's exploded. There's such a demand. There's not the qualified people.
True.
We don't know, but I've known people who've gone for 20 years and they have now have a friendship with their therapist because they don't have friends. So that's their only friend is talking to their therapist. So whatever. If you want to pay somebody to be a friend, then that's your decision. But
right.
But having a good relationship in our marriage. Oh, and that's we made a video recently about being married for 33 years, and the one thing we said, the biggest thing we said that helped us stay married is that we are direct and say what we need, so we don't let those conflicts build, and you hold them onto them for years and say, oh, I'm at you for 5 years ago, you said that. We address it.
Right, exactly.
We address it right away and say, that hurt me, that was mean, that was below the belt, or you shouldn't have said that. So being direct.
Or pack your bags.
So that's what's helped our marriage, is the directness.
Right. That makes a big difference. You have to be transparent with each other.
So let us know. Are you going to therapy? Is it successful? Have you had issues like us? I'm sure nobody's been as physically hurt as me because I am very sensitive. I will admit. I will always admit I'm very, very sensitive.
Yes, that's right. Some people are sensitive. I'm sensitive too in a way. But I have the ability to blow off a lot and not pay attention to it. And whether it's, stupidity or not, I just, life is way too short. And, I don't let things really get to me.
I mean, when somebody attacks your ability as a mother, when you've devoted so much. But now I realize this person doesn't even know me. Right. Our children are very successful. They've graduated college. Yeah. They have great lives. So I think that's the definition of success. I think we did a great job.
You were success, as a parent. We're success in our marriage. We're success in life. And so, we chalk it all up to, a good upbringing and, knowing the difference between right and wrong and following it.
Check out some of our other videos.
What we always ask for is a thumbs up, which is also a like.
Hit the notification button and subscribe.
And we'll see you again soon.
Until we do,
take it easy.
Bye.